Okay, Lucy, welcome. Can you start out by letting us know where you are right now? In your van, somewhere.
Okay, right now in this moment, I'm sitting in my van, our adventure wagon, which is an EV that we converted into a camper van. And we're parked on the side of the road, on top of a hill, outside a little valley where we have our land. So I've left my family finishing off their sweet corn and potatoes for dinner. And I've just driven up the hill because we don't have any internet on our land.
And how
to you, that's just like,
yeah, I'm like,
just such, I feel your fear.
Yeah, I would have placed the Yurt on top of the mountain then.
You can't do it.
No, I'm not good without Wi-Fi. But for the people who don't,
it is a little bit discombobulating at the beginning. I think it probably took a week to get used to, not having it, because we've actually been living in a town. We're in quite a nomadic phase of life at the moment.
Yeah.
So we've been on our land for 8 years, but then we spent the last year living in a little town, and we got very, very used to very fast internet. And all of us enjoyed it so much, that then when we came back to the land this summer, it took us a full week to sort of mentally adjust. But it's actually been so amazing. It's been like a vacation for your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's been a really interesting 2 months without having the internet, really. I know I've been incredibly annoying, like trying to get hold of me for a podcast.
Well, I haven't felt it.
No,
it's annoying.
No, it's fine. It's me doing the scheduling. No. When we started this nomadic life ourselves, part of me was like thinking, okay, then I don't work all the time, and then I just decide when I want to work. But I felt actually that I ended up being online most of the time, and which was kind of stressful. So part of me can understand maybe a future I can see myself in where we have no Wi-Fi from time to time. Now we are in a van and we have limited Wi-Fi. Right now we are in a rented Airbnb, but I actually like that the dedicated time. Now I work, now I don't work. It's actually nice.
Yeah, that's what I love about it. So I obviously still have to work, but I'm reliant on the library hours. So I have to do my work in a public space. So then if I need to run a course or a workshop, it is a little bit hectic. I have to ring around friends and try and find office spaces where there's not going to be other people around. And, there is a component of stress about it if your livelihood is based online. So it's a real interesting balancing act, I think, where if you want to have a really fulfilling livelihood as you travel and adventure, it does come with a certain need to be really flexible and quite resilient with how you're going to do things.
Yeah, and I would love to go into, for people who don't know you and your story, to hear that. But first of all, I need to give a greeting from our fellow friend Martin Cook and Charlie, whom we met through the World School Summit in Granada 3 years ago. And I just met him and I just love his vibe. I've only been together with him for a week, but I was like, that guy, I want to talk more with him.
Yeah, those two are amazing, aren't they? You can imagine what we're like when we get together. We just do not take a breath of air. Yeah, so we have known them for a really long time, since before even our second children were born. Their eldest daughter and my eldest daughter were firm friends when we lived next door to each other when we were in London. Yeah.
And that's kind of looping us into the story. You came from London, now you live in a yurt in New Zealand.
Yeah, so it's not totally as bizarre, or maybe it is, when you realize that my husband, Tim, is a New Zealander. So I feel like that takes off a little bit of the bizarreness of it. The yurt thing is still, you know, a little bit of a cliche, I think, moving from the big city of London to yurts. But yeah, we just really felt a call back to nature. You know, it is really, whenever I talk about it, I do make myself cringe. I'm like, oh, it's so cringy how stereotypical it is, you know. But I think maybe not stereotypical, maybe it's archetypal. You know, there is an archetypal theme to what we've done, which is humans, you know, getting really caught up in what you're supposed to do and fulfilling all the things that you do, you know, school, university, great jobs, mortgage in the city, big commute, and then having a kind of bit of a shake up. For us, it was just having children and considering what life we wanted to create with our kids. And then, you know, when you have that shake up, really considering, do we want to stay here? Do we want to keep ticking all these boxes and being normal, or are we willing to throw it all out the window and see what can develop? And for us, the pull was totally wild. It was a call back to nature, to like rewild ourselves. And we didn't know what it was at the beginning. We just sold our house. We had gone halves with my parents on a VW Westphalia, so we traveled around Europe for 6 months with our family, just being totally open, like wondering, what is this we're feeling? What is this call? What shape is it going to take? We had no idea. We just traveled around, bummed around, and eventually, after about a year, bumming around. That's the best phrase.
Having no idea what we're doing.
Yeah. We've been doing that for 5 years.
So good. I mean, we're actually heading back into that state right now, where we're like, you know, we've had these 8 years of pretty firm stability building this off-grid farm and yurt life in the wild in New Zealand, but don't know, we're feeling a similar kind of call at the moment to maybe something a bit different. And so yeah, at the moment I'm like, is it just a state of being? You know, and you're saying you've been in it for 5 years, right? Obviously.
We started out with buying a big red bus, and with the idea to roam Europe in it, but a bus is really big, so we ended up driving it to Spain, and then it ended being kind of a tiny house there. And we bought an extra car at VW to roam the lands. And now we have a bigger car.
Yeah.
So
It's been a process.
It's been a process.
Just first the bus was too big, and then we got a van, and it worked, but the children grew really fast, and it came too small. And now we have a van big enough, and I think we just have to reinvent ourselves all the time. And we considered this, should we just get some land and figure it out, and or buy a small place somewhere and just change location. We had like similar just in Copenhagen, great life there, and it was just not enough. But I think we could just never decide. It was like, not here, not that, and at the moment, at least, it's really fulfilling for us to keep change. To sometimes be, right now we're in a big city, we're in Palermo, Sicily, and enjoying art museums and cafes and concerts and archaeology, whatever. Very, very overstimulating because it's only 5 days, but we have all the big city experience, and then we'll go to the countryside and look at the horizon for a while. It's just,
with no Wi-Fi.
No.
No,
my husband can't do without Wi-Fi.
I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. Maybe one day.
So do you think a big part of being okay, so being 5 years into it, do you think a big part of it is as long as you're finding fulfillment with what you're doing, and as long as it maybe feels like a choice, you know, we're choosing this state of nomadic. Would it be nomadicy? Nomadsy, you know.
I know it's your language.
We're choosing a nomadic state for this season in our time. Do you think that's the point where you can take a big breath and feel okay with it, or do you still have moments of what are we doing?
I think I've had moments of what am I doing probably my entire life, but it got really worse when we started unschooling. Because it's a big responsibility to have children, and it's a big responsibility to call back the responsibility and say, okay, I'll make the decisions. So when we stopped using other people to help us take care of our children and educate our children, we started really feel the weight of this responsibility. So sometimes we have dark moments and feel like shit, we fucked everything up. I used a lot of swear words in one sentence there.
Yeah.
Hey, yo, Americans, I'm sorry. Okay, but we really do feel that with the swear words sometimes, but it gets more and more rare, and we get over it, and we realize it's just part of doing something radical, that there are not so many people out there doing the same thing. You have no mirrors, basically, and sometimes obviously the doubt will eat you up in the darkest moments of the night, and then we have some great conversations, and we made it a habit to talk to the children, as you know, that's
ask them.
I just talk to them. What do you want? Is this the life you want? Are you happy? And then they always come back saying, we're happy if we get a little more cake. And that's it. Yeah. So I don't feel frustrated with our life. It was just the way you described this, you know, traveling around, thinking about what life is and what to do with it. What do you want? That's kind of what we do, but I'm happy doing it.
Yeah, but we have been together for ages, Cecilia and I, but we have lived kind of not separate lives, but with Cecilia being the stay-at-home mom, then you need to live a life where you put value into your everyday on a much bigger scale than when you just go to a day job, where you just get the official society stamp, you are something. And
comes with the paycheck.
Comes with the paycheck. You are something, and being a mom is not so much of a job in people's mind. So I think Cecilia have had a lot more experience in figuring out who she is and her own internal value than I, who first last year cut the ties to more or less full-time jobs. I've collected together different stuff and had it next to. And now we're in another economic situation, so I can work less. But it came with not a depression, but a frustration and
an identity crisis.
And an identity crisis. 20 years of my life, I've been this guy going to work, having fancy titles here and there, and working in the media business, yada yada, you know. And then to figure out who am I, and first just okay, then I can actually do nothing most of the time, but that's not fun.
But it's also your, you know, the way you use the language and call it to do nothing.
Yeah.
You would say it's to do nothing.
But
if you have a conversation with your child, or if you
enforced upon me,
or you know, if you plan the meal, or you evaluate the photos you did in Rome last year, you call that do nothing.
Yeah.
Which I think is, you know, the most valuable thing you can do is take care of whatever is
it feels like we can all agree that just for that was a very capitalist mindset that you have there.
Absolutely.
I'm just kidding, but I know what you're saying. It's like you know, you can acknowledge that it feels like doing nothing, whilst also acknowledging that we all know that that is life, that is living itself, but you're still, and that's the deschooling process, isn't it? Or to go wider, the deinstitutionalizing institutionalizing. That's it.
Institutionalization?
You know, so to go wider, like as we're doing the deschooling, I don't want to have to keep saying that word, as we're doing the institutionalizing of ourselves, we're sitting with that discomfort of going, I know that in these moments, this is the living, but also I want to do something, you know, and I guess that's why it's, you know, sometimes I think of unschooling as being like the sacred path of unschooling, because it is such deep work that we're doing as we're like sitting with that discomfort and like actually in real time, like unpacking the institutionalization of ourselves and our worth and our productivity and what we should be doing. All of the shoulds are basically the institutionalization in our bodies and in our minds. Yeah. Bumming around. Love it.
Absolutely. But it's just, and it's been a wild ride this year, because I mean, we have lived so differently from many people for so many years. We have been unschooling for more than 10 years. We lived in a nice neighborhood and we were the weirdos there, with Cecilia staying home, a lot of kids, and we never locked our door, and all the others have break-ins, but we didn't. And it was just, we were the weird ones off, but at the same time, I've had this identity inside work for so many years. And I actually talked with a friend about it, and he said to me, when I was like, wow, why is it taking me so long to go through this? He said, hey man, chill. You have been in this identity for more than 25 years. Give yourself some time to figure it out. But it actually leads me to wants to talk with you about changing, being a Londoner to living in this Yurt. How was that for you? I know it's now many years ago and life has changed. But
yeah. So I'm a city girl, born and bred. I was born in a mining city of Newcastle. Moved to London when I was 7. Lived in cities all the time until I was 18, and then when I was 18 I moved to New Zealand. And so I think my rewilding began back then when I was 18 and came to New Zealand, and suddenly, you know, I was with other teenagers who would go to the beach and light a fire on the beach and just sleep out around a fire on the beach. You know, it was something that would never have occurred to any of my friends, you know, growing up. So I think the seeds were planted way back then. Then we moved, then I met Tim and we got married and we moved to London. And so we had 7 years in London where we had the girls. And that whole 7 years, we were trying to be wild, trying to honor our like wild selves. So, you know, when we were hanging out with Martin and Charlie, we'd get on a train with our bikes and a trailer with all our camping gear, and we'd train into the country, and then we'd bike with our trailer and set up a camp in the downs, you know, with no internet and no infrastructure, you know. But it just felt like we were having to work so hard to bring the wild into the central place that we wanted it to be while we were in London. So when we gave everything up and went roaming, it was really about wanting to spend more energy actually enjoying the wild rather than planning to be in the wild. Yeah, so I think it's been a really long journey that began when I was 18 for sure. But I think of our time in the Yurt as being a total rewilding. You know, it was really on the land here and in the Yurt that I reckon I totally got so much of the institutionalization out of my body, and, you know, learn things that I just felt I should have learned as a kid about, like the moon and the moon cycles, and just knowing at any one time where the moon was. You know, when we live in the Yurts, I just have that information readily available to me, not because I'm tracking the moon, but because I see it every night. It's like a really simple relationship that just forms really naturally without effort when you're actually living that way. And I've noticed that in the town over this last year, I'm still the same person with these wild instincts and this love of this beautiful planet, but I have to work so much harder. You know, I have to go, it's nighttime. Let me go and look at the night sky and see the stars. And I have to book a camping trip with the girls. And then I have to look around and go, oh God, we've all been online for like 4 days straight. Let's go and build a fire in the woods. You know, I have to like put so much effort in, whereas when you're really living smack bang in the middle of a forest, it all just is a lot easier and a lot more kind of natural. So that was the bit that I loved about it. I didn't have a choice about whether I was going to rewild. It happened to me. I put myself in there and then it all occurred, you know?
Yeah. What you told reminded me of our change from a 220 something square meter house in Copenhagen to a bus of 24 square meters, and now we are down to
a 7-meter van.
7-meter van with a living space of max 10 square meters,
and we are 5 adults now.
5 adults inside. And what I love about it is the less space I have, the more I'm forced outside.
Exactly.
I actually love the days in the van because I get you cannot be inside 5 people all the time in this one.
No.
But then we kind of have this breathe in, breathe out rhythm in our life, it seems like. Now we are in Palermo in Sicily, and it is wonderful, but there's so much going on. And as we are here limited time, we are out every day seeing stuff, museum, bam, 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 and then out in nature again and breathe in the van. It works for us right now. What works next year, we don't know yet.
Yeah, that feels beautiful. It feels really like you know, the best of both worlds, I think. And you know, I wasn't saying by any means that you know, our time in the yurts was like the way to do it, because obviously that's so inaccessible for, you know, the majority of people. It was just it's interesting to observe how much effort you have to put in if you don't design your life to be that way, as you know, you guys have. I think tiny spaces are amazing for that. We in New Zealand, or maybe it's just in our circles, hang on, yeah, maybe it's just in our circles, because, you know, we have a lot of unschoolers in our circles. And I think one of the amazing things about unschooling is that, you know, you question everything because it's such a paradigm shift. You put yourself into such a place of curiosity about everything. You're like, hey, how we do that? Does that make sense? Hey, this doesn't make sense. You know, and you start to like untangle all of the things that don't make sense. And I think one of the things that so often doesn't make sense is putting ourselves in gigantic houses with gigantic mortgages, or actually tiny houses with gigantic mortgages. So
tiny inner city apartments with gigantic mortgages. Yeah.
So a lot of people we know you know, they have built themselves little tiny houses, or they're living in buses or caravans, and they're perched on their in-laws, you know, lawn, and, you know, they're really doing life totally differently. And so it is really common around us to you know, when we go around to our friends in their tiny house, none of us are in their house, we're all in the garden, because that's the only place that we fit, you know. And it just feels it feels pretty healthy, that kind of interaction, I think, with your natural world.
Well, I think one more thing that really is healthy is the change. That's what I've been observing over these 5 years of traveling in different styles and different vehicles and different paces and different places and different plans, and is that whenever we change, it's kind of waking up from some habits or habitual ideas, or just something you think have to be a constant, like internet. you know, could I do without this, or could I do double of this, or what would a day look like if I did that instead? Can I carry all my stuff? And, you know, what if we're hungry and there's no food around, or all these things that we just have to handle our physical and emotional needs in so many different locations and situations and contexts. It really pushes that question everything thing even further than the unschooling. And I think it's very healthy. It really teaches us as well what is constant, what do we really do have to have. Like never ever leave the van without 2 liters of water, for example.
Yeah.
Bad plan. And something, this is a very simple one, maybe I knew that before, but I think it's like like you said, living in a yurt is not accessible, at least not like within the next 2 weeks of everyone. Same you could say about being nomadic, but changing the habits, that is something everyone can do. Go sleep in the garden, or under your dining table, and just see what happens, because it will change your all of these habits, all these things we do all the time, just because we're used to, it's like a sleep.
I love this. You are talking my language big time. You could probably tell I was just like, yeah, oh my God, yes, that's so true. I'm just a huge fan of that exact thing, like change, especially the mornings. I think like changing your morning and doing something brand new, doing something totally different, shifting your view, you know, changing the order in which you do something. And I reckon that is really the real powerful bit about travel. I mean, there's so much about travel, but I reckon one of them is, and I think it's really deep because I think it's related to the question. It's not just like curiosity about everything out there and the way everything is done. It's a curiosity about you. And it's like, who am I? And I think when you have a change and you change your habits, then you are going, am I this person that does this, that thinks these thoughts, that does this thing this way, and therefore has this attached emotion? And so when you have a new landscape to look at, or you change your morning, you are questioning all the time, like, who am I? What is my identity? What am I clinging to? Why am I acting this way? Could I change in a totally different way? And that has been something enormous that has happened for me in this last year living in town, has been a whole kind of shift in identity, really, given an opportunity to just change things up and change my habits and allow who I thought I was to kind of float away. Did any of that make sense? Or was I just did it?
No,
okay,
makes sense totally. Yeah. Just you know, we're doing the same thing, so it's a little hard to put in some questions.
No, I actually have a question.
Distracted by it was really fast, the end of the daylight in your end of the world.
Yeah, has it just gone?
It's just gone, and it's just I just finished my morning coffee, and you just had sunset, which is I know how it works, but it still amazes me.
It's weird, isn't it? Soon it's just going to be my teeth and my eyeballs shining.
The visual is good. It's not that. It's
I have one question. You have written some books. Are they part of like for you to dive into the changes going on inside of you, or why have you written them?
The books I've written, or read.
Written.
Yeah, I haven't written a book for ages. There was 4 years there, and I wrote a book a year, and I thought I was gonna keep doing that. But I decided that I want the next one to be like a really big project. And so guess what? I haven't started it. But yeah, I have in mind that maybe my next book would be about unschooling. But yeah, I think I just love to, I'm just one of those really incorrigible people who, when they've done something a bit like helpful, they're just like, I've got to tell the whole world about this, so hence me writing books. And yeah, and in fact, all of the books that I've written, I still do them. So my first book was about living without shampoo, which
I'm the same. I'm the same.
You probably don't. Yeah.
No,
You're great. You're already on that.
No, joke aside, we're down that road ourselves.
Oh yeah, cool. And me too, although I do bleach my hair now, but it's been 12 years now without shampoo. And then I think the last book I wrote was about moon circles. So about gathering in sacred space with women and, sharing what's on your heart, which is still really important in my life. And then I wrote a book about the rewilding process. And that for me was a really important book because I was going through this rewilding process, but I was trying really hard to write a book that showed how you could do it in tons of different circumstances. So it's like looks at different families who are doing it, in the middle of the city and that kind of thing. Yeah, but it's about time that I start my big project.
So how will you go about doing that?
Well, the thing is, I guess I have hundreds and thousands of words all about unschooling because I run these courses and I do, an hour and a half, 2-hour-long workshop once a month in my unschooling membership. And it's like, quite deeply thought out. So every month I'm producing like quite volumes of work. So I think now the problem is, what to do with it all.
Okay, how to reduce it, and yeah,
exactly. And like, what are the big themes here? Is there any way that these hundreds of thousands of words can make sense in a book? I've also written. I have a draft of the memoirs of moving to the yurts and what that was like, setting up our off-grid farm. I've got like 50,000 words in a draft there, but I mean, I feel like you guys probably know what it's like just having so many passions and so many things that you want to talk about,
and so many children. To me, that's the thing that stops all the projects all the time. It's like, yeah, but it's the more like acute thing to just spend some time with the children. I said we're 5 adults. We are in physical size, more or less 5 adults, but they're not adults yet. They're kids.
Yeah.
So can I choose between writing a book or just having one more good conversation with my son? Then I'll choose the conversation. And that makes real life just take over. And it stops me from doing these things. And I keep thinking, well, what is closest to the heart is more important. And my books keep being drafts.
Yeah.
And I
one day.
It's really dark in your end now.
Yeah, we can see the banks. Can we turn on some, do we have some light?
You can just see my shining fridge.
Exactly.
Just the banks.
It's brighter than my teeth. Oh dear.
Is there some light in the van you can put on?
Yeah, do you want me to?
Yes,
are you
please.
recording?
Yeah, we're recording it. So
right. I didn't know.
There you are.
Hello.
We
How's
can
that?
see you again.
Better.
A lot better.
Okay, cool.
Good enough.
Okay, you can now see this part of my hair.
This part. It works
as well.
As we say, it's very chill podcast, so all is good. What was your road into stumbling upon unschooling and choosing that as a life?
Okay, so one of the things that happened for us when we chucked in our London lives and went traveling in the camper van around Europe was that we didn't mean to do this.
Back then? Sorry, just to set the
How old?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How
So
old were your children?
Ramona was 2.5. Ramona turned 3 while we were in the bottom of Spain in the desert. And Juno had really just been born. She was 3 months old.
Okay.
So yeah, that was very interesting because we were also doing nappy free elimination communication, which, you know, was interesting in a van.
Oh,
But
tried it.
my beautiful Nana had passed away, and she had left all of her tenor pads, you know what elderly people use. They're like gigantic sanitary pads, but my mum was gonna give them all because they were still in boxes. She was gonna give them to the charity shop, but I was like, no, they'll be perfect. So whenever we traveled in the van, I just put like an old like tenor pad in Juno's car seat, and so if she did need to go while we were like traveling around, we just kind of went through. So we didn't travel, we were very disorganized. We had so many random things in our van, but one of the things we had was like a massive box of tenor pads.
Of tenor pads.
Okay.
Sorry,
so
back to the unschooling.
Yeah, and it worked really beautifully because you know, like you say, when you're living in a van, you're outdoors most of the time, which is obviously perfect if you're nappy free. But what happened was that we ended up traveling around Europe and getting all of the ingredients that we were going to use in the cake of the next phase of our life without knowing it. That wasn't the plan. I just wrote on my blog, guys, we're just going to go and, you know, blat around Europe. Does anybody have any cool suggestions of things to do? And then, you know, this was 2010, right? So, oh no, 2012. So it was the days when you wrote a blog and people wrote comments. Don't think it's super normal now. But and then you would act, if you're a blogger, you'd act on the comments. So basically our entire Europe trip was like designed by the readers of my blog back then. And one of the suggestions was to go and visit someone's friend in the Black Forest of Germany, where he was running a Waldkindergarten, a forest kindergarten. And so we drove in, we parked naughtily for free in the Black Forest. And we woke up at dawn to a rap, rap, rap on the window thinking, oh, it's a ranger, because they're quite serious in the Black Forest. You actually can't park there. And we opened the door and it was the Waldkindergarten leader, and he was bringing us pastries for our breakfast. And so that began like a 3-week kind of friendship romance with this leader and his beautiful family and all of the kids in that Waldkindergarten. And so we just would go there and just hang out, and our kids would play and enjoy it. But at the same time, I had just picked up in a charity shop John Holt's How Children Learn. So a really iconic book about unschooling, basically. This teacher, John Holt, just sharing everything he could see happening in a child's natural learning process. And so while I was reading this book and then watching these 30 children just live their lives with like total autonomy, agency, sovereignty, and seeing the adults just in support role, it was just like an alchemy that just fired something. Yeah, it was the combo, I think. Just seeing it in practice might have taken me a few more years of just, you know, thinking about it, and then maybe just reading the theory might have taken a few more books for it to land. But it was the combination of reading the theory and seeing it in front of me that just went like in my brain. And then I just knew immediately that that was what we were going to do with our lives. And it was just an absolute moment of faith, like a Damascus Road experience of being totally pro-school to being totally anti-school and pro-unschooling. It was like the difference between night and day in just that 1 month of my life. Yeah, so we haven't looked back since.
Wow.
No doubts, no regrets.
We, our story is that we lived in this big suburban house, or not suburban, big house in Copenhagen. And for some reason, when we got our first baby together, then I remembered back to my mom's stories about me going to like sing, play thing in the church as babies. So we wanted to do that, and there we met. I wanted to do it, and I went once, twice, and it was terrible. And I asked Cecilia to check it out also, and it was also terrible. But what happened was we met a woman living down the road who was into homeschooling, and it was, for me, it was like, man, that's weird. I was on the normal dad mode of that's weird. Our grown-up daughter, she was in in a private school, and I was also, that is weird. Why the public school was good enough for me, you know, down the whole road to now being totally pro unschooling and self-directed. It's
you can be more, it's possible to be more radical than you.
Yeah.
As I am more radical.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm not very radical.
But, well, you just still think that, you know, schools can be good and we should keep the schools, and it's good for some people. And I think that's more like, let's not provoke anyone.
Yeah.
I'm just more into the let's burn it all. I think it makes more damage and then it heals, and it would be a better place if everybody woke up and all the school buildings were just gone. Yeah. And we had
this is very fascinating. I used to be like you. I was super stridently like, nah, seriously, the end of school. Like, I am genuinely sad when I'm walking through a town and there's no children.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, what kind of fucked up place is this? Where we've taken all the kids and put them in some kind of ghetto behind fucking gates, and then the rest of the world continues and there's no children here. I honestly, it makes me genuinely sad. And when it's school holidays and there's kids everywhere, I love it. I'm a little bit mad that the skate ramp isn't free and, you know, the museums are busy, etc. But, you know, I feel like it's just so natural and normal to have the streets teeming with children having fun and their laughter. So, you know, I'd be like, burn the schools down. Okay. And then it might have been some kind of lockdown in our town. But what happened was the schools are all shut down. And then all the kids were in town. And I think it was maybe like the teenagers. And they didn't really know what to do with themselves. And none of the adults knew what the kids needed either. And so what happened was a kind of vicious circle where the kids suddenly had all this free time and didn't really know what to do with themselves because they'd spent their whole lives being told what to do. And the adults didn't know what they needed, and then noticed the kids, you know, maybe doing stuff that they shouldn't do. And so then was like, you know, they'd be on the Facebook notice board. Oh, I saw the kids doing da-da-da. And then everybody would pile in talking smack about the teenagers. And so then the teenagers were then put in a different kind of ghetto. And it just was like a little moment where I was like, oh, my kind of utopic black and white dream of just like getting rid of schools is out of reach because we haven't done internal work required as a society to support our children en masse to live well without school. So I feel like life outside of school for lots of these teenagers, if we were to just do it right now, today, boom, would be really bad because of the adultism that is so rife in our society that we cannot treat kids well. And it's possible that even in school, they're getting treated better than they would if they were like roaming in the streets because of adultism. So I feel like we need to dismantle adultism whilst dismantling schools. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense, and obviously
unfortunately,
I agree with you. I'm not, naive enough to think that everyone would have done their inner work in case all the schools burned down overnight. It's just that I'm not, I don't agree that we need it. I agree. I really think it would be better to little by little dismantle it and put the trust back in life, and put the trust back in the children, and allow everybody to unfold themselves, and put the responsibility back into the families. Forget about the curriculum, forget about this whole childhood of grades, and a whole childhood being about preparing you for adulthood in a way that, well, first of all, I don't think it's about preparing for something else. Being a child is about being a child and should be unfold while happening. And secondly, I think this, you have to get ready for something. That's what you're doing as a child. I think it's very stressful actually for the children. It would be much better to change this perspective. And I think it would solve a lot of problems if we could get out of the general idea of schooling. And that's how I'm radical. I think maybe some children would have had a better life inside a school than they would get in the fictional world where schools don't exist. But in general, I think it would be a better development, and things would happen. That's the other thing. If all the children were available, then things would happen. There would be this artist who would give classes, and everybody would go there, and communities would arise, and ideas would arise, and it would be beautiful, I think. And it would, I think about this question we get all the time, and I suppose you know it by heart. This, what about the social life of your unschooled children? Do they have any friends, and how will they manage socially? We get that question all the time, and obviously their skills socially develop beautifully as they live their life through many different social settings. But it is a real problem to find friends. Well, it is a real problem to find friends who are under 25 years old, because they are all locked up in the schools. And it's not because there's something wrong with the unschooling idea. There's something wrong with everybody else being locked up in the schools.
Exactly. I know that's one of those paradoxes, isn't it? It's like it's not hard socializing in that, they've got hundreds of people to socialize with, but it's like so many of their peers are not available for playing with, because we live in a school fixated society. But everything you say makes me just feel like, and this is why unschooling is so important, and why when people go, oh, it just takes so much privilege to unschool, and you're just abandoning the school system, to me, I'm like, we got to zoom out, because it does feel like that. I can hear you. It does feel like that for sure. But what unschoolers are doing here is they're creating space for what is possible. And unschooling families and other people following self-directed learning and consent-based learning methodologies are revealing to the rest of society what is possible, what it can look like when kids are trusted, what it can look like when kids aren't forced to do things. And if we didn't have people living this kind of quite privileged life of unschooling, we would never fucking know what it can look like. There would be absolutely no possibility of change occurring ever, because there would be nobody showing what is possible. And so that is why I think we do just have to suck up the criticism of the privilege, because it's, and just be like, I'm taking a zoomed out view here. This is overall really, really critical for society, that we have families showing what life can look like outside of an institution. It's critical, and it is a huge, huge service to marginalized communities and future generations of children.
Exactly. And that's why I think when I sometimes get the criticism, I have a very nice education, and why don't I give back to society by, fulfilling the job and paying some more tax and putting my kids in the school and all these things. And I think that it's a beautiful combination that I really want to spend time with my children and my husband, and live a life based on my heart. Whoever is close to me is what is important and will suck up most of my time. But at the same time, I feel I'm really giving back to our culture by walking a different path. And I don't believe everyone has to walk this path, but I think it's very important that at least everyone stop to think about it. It's like this automated thing that kids have to go to school, and there's no question. We decide, we can question what school and what is the curriculum and how do we do it, but not do we do it at all. And I think that living this life, sometimes we say everybody else are inside a box, and what we do is poke holes in that box just to let some light in, and we just keep poking that holes, those little tiny, I mean, we can't change the whole thing, and you can't either, but maybe together we can at least, open. When we started, at least in our country, it was a really, really rare and radical thing to do. It was like, I don't know, maybe 10 families homeschooling, at least that I know of. It was really radical, and it would have been nice if there was, someone to follow, someone to look at.
But it leads me to a question I often give myself in my life. Also in another area I work with an organization called Gaia Education, who makes curriculums and education inside sustainability. And when I was there, I was like, yeah, this is good, but the amount of people who take these courses and go out and do something, they are like, it was 300 or 400 years. And that is not changing the world. So I was talking with the team who made the programs about what could we do to make programs that could make an actual change if you get an inner city dweller to look at life differently. And I can ask myself sometimes the same question about unschooling. So what is it? I don't believe that I would love if everybody went down a road of living freely and living together with their children and wanting to spend time with their children and actually live together with them while they are there and they need them. To have a childhood together with your parents for most kids would be wonderful. But I do not believe yet that everybody will go down that road. So what is it from unschooling and this mindset we have that we can give to and inspire and give to the people who are stuck in the 9 to 5 or won't leave it because the comfort is actually super nice. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And I don't know, is it the trust? Maybe it's the trust, trusting the children, not removing the ageism or adultism, as you call it.
I think I wonder about that. To me, it feels like the really relevant bit of unschooling that seems to intersect across so many parts is the hierarchy and the kind of the general rule that seems to pervade quite a lot of spaces, is that if you're bigger or more powerful, then you are on top, and I think that one of the basic things about unschooling is that you just don't live that way. You try and live with everybody in your family counting and everybody getting a say, and and I feel like that's something that is an internal thing that you can take with you into whatever sphere you're in, like your work, your business, your like client relationships, your community relationships, this idea that every person is worthy of dignity. And so I wonder if that that feels to me like a really powerful part of an unschooling mindset that is relevant to everyone. And it is related to trust. It's like, if you can honor every person that you come into relationship with or communication with, as being like really worthy of dignity, then they can also be trusted, you know? And I think there's so much of unschooling that is relevant.
It's a beautiful and very, I'll say it again, beautiful perspective. I have a more brutal one, kind of. I think that wherever you are, wherever stuck you are in career and mortgage and whatever, at least reach a point where you realize this is something you chose. Like it was a voluntary choice to buy that apartment and to put the children in that school. You had those children, you know, that was not an accident. And the life that we have designed, we actually did design it ourselves, and we can make a choice. I remember when I had cancer, I thought I'd rather live in my car than ever go to work again. That was one of my epiphanies. It was like, I'm not doing it. I'm simply not doing it. And most people could do it. It's unschool their kids and quit their jobs. And the price might be like really, really complicated, and maybe they don't want to. But I think this, at least realizing that it's a choice, and there is some voluntary, I can't find how to, frivillighed, whatever, I can't find the right word in English, but and give that freedom back to all members of the family, and taking the responsibility. Tell your 10-year-old, I decided that you go to school because I want to live this life. I want to I want to have my job, and I'm not taking the responsibility of your education, so you go to that school. This is what I chose. Instead of this, everybody have to do it, or it's the law, or otherwise you will never get a job, or all these excuses circling around. Take back the responsibility for what you did and how you chose to do it. And maybe you put yourself in a corner that's really hard to get out of, and you don't want to do that work, but then decide it and be happy. It's this excuse thing. I think it would be very nice to get rid of.
I hear you. I think there is it's really interesting. I think that an enormous amount of the people who engage with me and are like, but not everybody can do this, I think an enormous amount of those are probably people who could do it, and who, you know, would just need to make some different life choices and sacrifices to make it happen. I do think that there are a lot of people who are choiceless, you know, because that is one of they are the spoils of capitalism, or one of the legacies of this society that we live in, is that there are actually people in society who, and that's the worst bit, I think, is like a lot of the kids that will struggle the most in school are in families who actually are completely choiceless in this, you know, like the families are working 3 or 4 jobs just to, you know, I'm thinking of, you know, inner city families who have been marginalized by system. And I think it's fair to say, there's actually loads of like middle class people who like sort of accuse unschoolers for doing something inaccessible when they actually probably could make it work, but also acknowledging that because of the system we live in, there are those who are systemically marginalized, who are going to feel the brunt of this. Like, that's what is so maddening about it, is that it's those kids who are not even going to get a single benefit, you know, from the school system, quite probably, you know. They're going to be the ones who are leaving age 15 and, you know, without literacy. Statistics are showing vast numbers of kids are doing, So school's not even doing the thing that it is like meant to do. It's wild.
Yeah. When the argument is school is saving the children of the poorest and the most trapped people in society, my take is I don't think it works.
No, I don't think so.
Some of the
subjects... and an unacknowledgement of like how if you're perpetuating a hierarchical kind of those who are in authority are the boss and not to be questioned, not recognizing how perpetuating that all the way through the school system perpetuates injustice and poverty across the whole of society as well.
Yeah. It's like it's just keeping the system running.
Yeah, it totally is. Yeah. Oh boy, we went some places today.
Yeah. I think you sit there in complete darkness. Can you find your way back?
Like, oh, I wonder what would happen if I put my headlights on. Maybe I'd get more light in here. No, that makes sense.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
But should we land?
No, a little more.
Okay.
If you have time.
Yep.
Perfect. No, it's just some of the subjects we touched about what unschooling do for you as a person. So, in one of our earlier episodes, we talked with Erica Davies-Pitre, a wonderful, wonderful woman. And one thing she said, we asked her about what have unschooling done for you, and she said it has given me my humanity. And I was blown away by that. It's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. And
it's so hard to know who you'd be without unschooling when you've done it for so long. The last 12 years for me has been just like the most gigantic healing journey ever.
Yeah.
And I can't say that wouldn't have happened without unschooling, but definitely the questions that unschooling has raised for me has led me down the most, tremendous healing journey of so many wounds and scars.
I wish I could say the same. I feel they're still there, most of the wounds and scars, to be honest.
It's a process. It's a process.
I know where they are, but healed?
Not yet.
Healing, hence me saying healing journey. It's ongoing.
At least I know the roadmap for the journey.
Yeah, right. I think things like I began painting again last year and ended the year with a little art exhibition in my town. And, I was massively motivated to do that, having been on a journey of healing the wounds of creativity that I think school graciously imparted, and also being really motivated to live out loud the stuff that I'm trying to sort of raise the kids with, around following their heart, even though it doesn't make sense and it just feels like you're just randomly splashing paint on a canvas and you don't know what the end result is, being detached and not worrying about failing. I was like really motivated to go on that art exploration over the last couple of years. I think really primarily because of unschooling. Yeah.
And it led me to a very small epiphany I got last year, which is I really enjoy art. I love going to museums. I love listening to music. I love going to cultural events. And then one day I was like, hey, but somebody needs to make it. Somebody needs to do it. Otherwise, there is no stuff to go and enjoy. So that's also one of the reasons we have started our podcast. I love to listen to podcasts. And I'm like, but you need to give back then. You need to be a culture creator for there to be culture. So wonderful that you're starting doing art again.
Yeah, I love that. That was the whole reason I got started with blogging was in the breastfeeding months, and I was spending, you know, what it would be like every single minute of the day breastfeeding. And I was reading just, you know, the internet. Just, I had my phone in my hand and I just read blogs and forums and blogs and forums, you know, about breastfeeding. and I, after like a couple of months of this, I was like, oh, I don't want to be a consumer in this space. I want to be a creator. And so, yeah, when Ramona was like 3 months old, I started my parenting blog, which, you know, brings me to where I am today.
Yeah.
That exact thing, that desire to not just consume, but to create.
And for people, we have taken a lot of time now, and we try to keep our podcast around an hour, so we should kind of close up. And one way of doing that is to let people know, if they're like, I want more of Lucy, where should they go? How do they find you? And what can they expect?
So I'm all over the internet, as you can imagine. I'm mostly on Instagram, but I also just started a TikTok, which is very fun. I don't know if you've explored that, but mostly Instagram. And then my website is discolearning.com. And if you head there, then you can sign up to my newsletter, which is called Jukebox. And every 2 weeks, I send out a really fun, helpful email that also includes music that I'm loving. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So I reckon that would be the best thing if people want to stay in touch with me, is to jump onto the Jukebox mailing list. And
Perfect.
eventually I might see some folks in a workshop or a course.
Hopefully. We want to thank you for your time. It has been a really good and lovely talk. And
like always, we
yeah.
feel it's too short.
We hope to one day roam New Zealand, and if you're still there, we will drop by.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I've actually totally forgotten that we're recording a podcast because it just felt like I've been chatting with a friend. And I didn't know it was recording, so I feel like I've just been fidgeting.
No, you've been nice. No nose picking or any other embarrassing.
So it'll be really interesting to see how it turned out, but I've enjoyed every minute of it, so thank you.
It was very nice. Yeah, I wish I could just go, but it is on the other side. New Zealand. Not coming next week.
No.
Well, we're gonna be in Europe, so maybe we'll see you over there.
We're going to the UK this summer, so if you're home, we will.
Yeah, that's where we'll be
when you're in Europe.
Okay, but thank you, and I will just hit stop recording.
Cool. Let's stop, otherwise we'll talk all day. Okay, ciao.
Ciao.
See ya.